Good afternoon. Thank you for joining today's webinar presentation on SAMHSA's 2018 Campus Suicide Prevention Grant. Just to cover some webinar guidelines, this presentation will be recorded. A copy of the recording will be sent after the presentation. All attendees are in listen-only mode, so if you have a question for the Q&A portion or as I'm going through the presentation, feel free to submit on the right side of your screen. And feel free to connect with us on Twitter at Kognito with the hashtag #CognitoWebinars. Just to introduce myself briefly, my name is Brian Nito, and I am the Director of Client Experience, and I'm happy and glad to be joining you today for this webinar. To cover a little bit of today's agenda, we will do an overview of what is GLS, an overview of Kognito's suicide prevention simulations, how Kognito supports the requirements and suggested requirements of the grant activities, a demonstration of our at-risk for student simulation, benefits of using Kognito with GLS, and time permitting, the Q&A portion. So what is the GLS grant? GLS stands for Garrett Lee Smith, and it is a memorial fund to public and private college universities to encourage the development of a holistic approach to support college students as they address the suicide, serious mental illness, and/or substance use. Additionally, it helps prevent and promote help-seeking behavior and reduces the stigma associated with these mental and substance use disorders. Lastly, it improves the identification and treatment of at-risk college students so they successfully complete their academic tenure. Here are some award info to be mindful of. The deadline submission is Tuesday, February 20th, 2018. The total funding available is in excess of $1.8 million, and there are 18 anticipated awardees. Award amounts range up to $102,000 annually for 3 years. And lastly, cost-sharing match is required. A little bit about my team and Kognito. We are a role-play simulation company that empowers and enables higher ed institutions build the capacity and ability of its faculty, staff, and students to lead real-life conversations. Since 2010, Kognito has provided support of 50% of all GLS grantees. We currently support 350 institutions and have been used by over 500,000 faculty, staff, and students nationwide. Our diverse portfolio of simulations aim to address a number of desired goals from student mental health, retention, and academic performance. Now, in a quick important fact to highlight, Kognito is the only company with health simulations in SAMHSA's National Registry of Evidence-Based Programs and Practices, or NREP. All 6 of our higher ed programs are also listed in SPRC Best Practices Registry, that is the Suicide Prevention Resource Center. Currently, the student version of At-Risk is listed, while the faculty version is accepted for review within NREP. As part of the client program here at Kognito, the client will have access to an online portal 24/7 for on-demand usage report access of each of the simulations you license. As a SAMHSA GLS recipient, we'll also provide you an automatically generated SAMHSA report that contains grant evaluator requirements on a quarterly basis. Lastly, we do have the ability to customize demographic data collection fields before accessing the course, which is a great benefit for your individual and evaluator research needs. Within the Kognito user experience, there are built-in assessment surveys through pre, post, and follow-up user surveys. These questions address changes in behavior ranging from early intervention skills, attitude, and motivation. Clients do have the ability to customize questions to fit their own research needs or interests. As an example of this, a former GLS grantee utilized their data collected to submit manuscripts for publication. A team member on my client experience team is designated and will assist you with implementation support. An account manager will be assigned to help develop and implement a rollout strategy to promote simulations to all your end users. Our team also created promotional materials like the one featured on the screen to aid in implementation efforts, including flyers, PowerPoints, discussion guides, all to ensure that your institutions are successful in reaching a broader and larger reach. Lastly, the account manager will ensure and help drive utilization over time, and that the Kognito programs are implemented with fidelity. Now, a couple of flexible delivery methods. We provide standalone online trainings. We integrate it with, you can integrate with in-person trainings, and we provide a facilitator manual or discussion guide. It can be offered and coupled with a prerequisite or postrequisite in-person training. It serves as an alternative to those who are unable to attend an in-person training. Kognito simulations are compatible with 503 and 508 requirements for users with disabilities. And lastly, simulations integrate nicely into curriculum with students, for example, within Psychology 101 classes and health courses. Now, a little bit more on the at-risk for student simulation before we jump into the demonstration. Note, we do have a faculty version as well. This is a 30-minute evidence-based simulation for students and student leaders. A student user will assume the role of Jesse, who you'll be introduced to shortly, as they engage in a series of interactive scenarios to learn about potential warning signs, available support services, and how to talk to a friend showing signs of psychological distress. I believe we have some technical difficulties on our end, so please bear with us as we reset. But I'll unpack a little bit more about the at-risk for students simulation. Now, the ultimate goal of the simulation is for individuals to learn how to engage in a hands-on and realistic conversation with a virtual student. And they can apply those learning techniques with a student exhibiting similar signs of psychological distress in real life. So the goal and the learning objectives that you experience within the higher ed simulation, you can apply in and after taking the simulation that we're about to demonstrate. Now, here's a look at risk for college students. I do want to put a disclaimer that we are going to play this, and we're going to have the captions play, as there might be a slight delay. Bear with us while we work on the technical issues. Thank you.
Travis has been posting sad things online, and his friends have done the right thing by reaching out to him whenever he did to ask if he was okay or wanted to talk. So far, he hasn't really opened up to anybody. And today, Jesse is going over to his place to see him. You'll play Jesse, and your goal is to let Travis know you're concerned and find out how he's doing. Conversations like this are best face to face, but any conversation is better than none at all. However, you have a conversation like this, it should be private. So let's head over to Travis's apartment to talk.
Great. So that is a overview how all of our simulations start with an introduction. We are going to move into the interactive portion where users will get to test out common pitfalls or recommended pathways to help this individual. So as you can see, we have a choice selector from Make an Observation and also Make Small Talk, and we'll go through some examples of this talk track. So Jesse is, so you can make Jesse feel comfortable in your conversation.
Like we don't hang out much anymore. What are you up to? Oh, just work. I have so much stuff to do you wouldn't believe. Oh, like what? Oh, I've got like 5 or 6 projects I'm supposed to be working on. Wow, that's a lot. Yeah. A couple of props last semester gave me extensions, so that's a ton of work. But now this semester's piling up too.
Great. So some key features to point out that are being highlighted on the screen is the virtual coach. She's going to guide you through some choices that you make. For example, on the screen right now, it says, this is a great way to start the conversation. You brought up Travis's absence in a non-judgmental way, using an I statement. I feel like we don't hang out anymore. Another feature, if you are, the virtual coach makes a recommendation, you can undo the choice that you just made. So you can go back and try another talk track. So we're going to go ahead and express a concern, and here's the response from Jesse.
We're all really worried about you. We think you're depressed. What? Well, I'm glad you guys have it all figured out.
So instead of a pop-up in the bottom of the page, there's an immediate note from the virtual coach saying labeling Travis as quote-unquote depressed only puts him on the defensive. Plus, it sounds like all of his friends have been talking about him behind his back. So it forces you to undo, which requires you to make an additional selection other than the one you just made.
I got to thinking about what you said the other day about giving up painting and switching majors and all. I can't believe it. Yeah, I know.
Great. So as you can see, you made a better selection. The virtual coach is saying you're bringing up a good point, and you can move forward and have forward progress.
I thought you really loved painting. You're really good at it. What's going on? Can't all be great. Sometimes you just have to wake up, face reality.
And you continue and progress through the conversation to really unpack what is at the heart of the issue, which is ultimately to refer Jesse or folks like Jesse to the appropriate support services. So I wanted to move forward and talk a little through about how we meet the GLS grant activities that are required, and then also our suggested requirements. The first two, Kognito fully supports train college students, faculty, and staff to respond effectively to college students with mental and substance use disorders, and provide outreach services to inform and notify college students about available mental and substance use disorder services. Kognito's suite, we do offer as training programs, specifically outlined, addressing these topics, and we incorporate the customization of an embedded local resources page with relevant support services information. With your your dedicated account manager, you will create a landing page that is specific to your institution's support service contact information or referral process. So we'll work with you to embed that within your simulation experience. The next two bullets, Kognito partially supports administer voluntary mental and substance use disorder screenings and assessment, and creating a network infrastructure to link the institution of higher ed with appropriately trained behavioral healthcare providers who treat mental and substance use disorders, including a plan to seek input from relevant stakeholders in the community and other appropriate public and private entities to carry out the program. Kognito programs do help equip practitioners with SUDs and mental health screening. Additionally, as previously mentioned, we integrate a local resources page in each simulation that is institution specific with on and off campus support services. Now, these are a listing of suggested grant requirements. The next activity is to educate and disseminate information materials to college students, families, faculty, and staff to increase awareness of mental and substance use disorders. Part of the implementation support materials that we just covered provide exactly that. We have flyers, posters, postcards, and encourage clients across the board to use this materials to communicate this information. We also encourage that the simulations are made available to families of students. Number two, conduct research through a counseling or health center at the institution of higher education to improve the behavioral health of college students through clinical service outreach, prevention, or academic success in a matter that is in compliance with all applicable personal privacy laws. Kognito administers the pre, post, and follow-up anonymous assessment of users, which are customizable by campus research teams. So you have that opportunity if you so choose to. Lastly, develop and support evidence-based and emerging best practices, including a focus on culturally and linguistically appropriate best practices. Now, how do we support this requirement? Kognito's at-risk suite have been approved by NREP, as previously mentioned. Additionally, we incorporate cultural competency training into our LGBTQ and veteran simulations, which is also part of the higher education suite. We have a specific targeted simulations that address those at-risk populations as well. The last set of activity requirements we partially or fully comply with as well. We operate hotlines or promote linkage to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Now that lifeline is prominently featured within the simulation. We also provide mental and substance use disorder prevention and treatment services to college students by employing appropriately trained staff. Service might include recovery support and early intervention programs, treatment, and management. Kognito offerings do help equip practitioners with the skills for SUDs and mental health screening. Lastly, support college student groups on campus, including athletic teams that engage in activities to educate college students to reduce negative attitudes about mental health and behavioral health disorders and to promote mental health. So all of our student simulations are all geared towards students to reduce the stigma and help identify peers in distress to refer them to the appropriate support services. Just as a side note, on our data further indicates that student athletes are referred almost twice as frequently to those support services. Now, just a recap of some of the benefits implementing Kognito through GLS. We have the experience. We have been a partner of GLS, former GLS grantees since 2010, and have provided support to over 50% of those award grantees. We have predictable pricing. We have fixed pricing for 3 years. So if you are a awardee, you have the ability to sustain that pricing annually for 3 years. If you decide to continue with us, there is a sustainability discount, so you can use us for a 4th year at a discount of 25%. All of our simulations are evidence-based, as I've covered with pre, post, and follow-up assessment surveys, which enable us to be listed as within NREP. And there's a time-saving GLS required reporting, which is provided to you as a automatically generated report that we would provide to you on a quarterly basis. Now, I wanted to take a moment for a few questions that you might have as you're going through this grantee application process. So I'm going to pause and look to see if you have any questions. There looks to be a lot of questions on pricing. I am the implementation guide and guide to hopefully see your program pushed with fidelity within your campus. And I wanted to just recommend that you email the email on the screen, educationsegment@kognito.com, if you have any pricing inquiries, and they will happily respond to you with any of those fixed pricing numbers. And just to further unpack that, our pricing is based on tiering structure of your enrollment, and they can outline details on how that works based on the size of your institution. Excellent. So I know we are at the top of the hour or the end of this presentation. I wanted to thank you all for joining us today. Again, you will receive a copy of the presentation, recording and slides for your use. We hope and look to see your name of your institution as an awardee for 2018 for the GLS Grantee Award. Thank you and have a great rest of your afternoon.